talk to me about how the campaign's going so far.
Well, we like it. Momentum seems to be great around the state. Enthusiasm continues to grow. I think it's going to be a big turnout year for Republicans and conservative voters in general, so I'm optimistic.
What's your reaction to the recent polls? One of them, I think, at least a week or two ago, showed you with an advantage.
Yeah, there's been several that show us up of as much by 10 points, and the average is about a jump ball, which we take as very good news, because just before the primary, most of the polls were saying John Hickenlooper was going to coast into re-election. Those days are gone, and it's very much now a very competitive race, and we like the way the trend is headed, and next month we hope to have a victory for Colorado.
What's your message to voters who are still on the fence or just now kind of getting acquainted with the race?
Well, if they're concerned about whether or not we're on the right track, wrong track. I know a lot of folks in Colorado Springs, El Paso County, where I'm headed tonight, Pueblo, they're still wondering where that recovery is for them. And when you analyze what the economists are telling, the reason it's been so sluggish, the reason we've still got so much anxiety, so much holding us back, it's government. Government regulation at the federal level, government regulation at the state level. John Hickenlooper's implemented over 2,000 regulations just in his first term as governor. Does anybody really think our problem with getting this economy moving again is that we've been under-regulated? I don't think so. So what I want to do is just the opposite. I've been a small businessman almost all my life, all except the 4 years I did go to Congress. I've been in small business. And I know the best thing that government can do is recognize the goodness in people, trust in the people, get out of the way of people. Well, right now we're living through an era of government on the people. And that's what's holding us back. We're going to go through everything government does. And if it isn't pro-job, pro-opportunity, pro-individual liberty and freedom, we're going to grab it by its roots, rip it out, and get rid of it.
What is it about your experience that you think that differentiates you from the current governor and how you be different?
Well, I've spent my life primarily in rural Colorado, but I've represented an urban district, ran an urban bank for a good bit of my life too. So I've had that balance of urban and rural life. We're bison ranchers in the mountains now. And I understand the diversity and the greatness of this whole state. John still seems to be caught up. In fact, people ask me, does he realize he's no longer just mayor of Denver? You need a governor for all of Colorado that understands water issues and understands energy issues, and understands the beauty and diversity of our western slope and our mountain districts, and especially the eastern plains and what agriculture really means to Colorado. John seems to struggle with that. He gets downtown Denver, maybe even a little bit of the Front Range, but when you get around Colorado, people are not only feeling like maybe he doesn't know they're out there, they feel ignored. And that's not being a governor that stands up for Colorado. He seems to want to listen to Michael Bloomberg, doesn't seem to want to listen to the folks in Colorado.
How will you be different then? What specifically will you do once you get in there, once you get in office, if you were to be elected?
It's a way of life. And I've lived my entire life here. Third generation on my dad's side, fifth on my mom's side. It's the only home I've ever known. It's where I've always done business. Our cattle business, our banking business, development business, now our bison business, represented Colorado. It's a matter of having your ear and your eyes really open to the people and believing and trusting in them. Look, this is the way I put it. The real question on the ballot, do you believe and trust in people, or do you believe and trust in government? Where I come from, people solve problems. It's not that people are the problem. And right now we've got an Obama-Looper regime that by regulating us, restricting us, controlling us, making decisions for us, forcing them down our throat, they obviously don't trust us. It's a completely different mindset with me. I believe in the goodness and the decency of people. And we're going to get government out of the way as the founding fathers and our ancestors said it worked best.
What specifically are you running on two single most important issues you think that Southern Colorado voters are facing that are key in this election?
Well, to get your economy going again, we're going to audit government. We're going to turn the tables. Instead of government always auditing the people and auditing the businesses, we're going to audit government, and we're going to invite people to help us with that audit. In fact, right now, you can go to bobbeauprez.com/audit and send us your ideas, whether it's part of the culture of government, that government is getting in our way, slowing down permits, licensing, regulating where they don't really need to be. If we've got to amend or repeal legislation, tell us those ideas, and that's what we're going to get rid of. When Utah did that, they got rid of 20% of the regulations in their state. They vaulted to #1 in economic outlook and opportunity. We've fallen from #2 4 years ago to #22. The other big difference we're going to make is we're going to end this scandal, and it is a scandal, of third grade reading proficiency in Colorado. You know that statewide, excuse me, statewide almost 30% of our third graders can't read as 8 and 9-year-olds should. That's just wrong. That's just wrong. And the test scores this year on Hickenlooper's watch got worse by almost 2 full percentage points.
But how do you do that with limited availability of funds for education?
Because it's a priority. It's a matter of leadership. And this is where John falls down so badly. He signed with a whole lot of fanfare something called the READ Act 3 years ago. That was supposed to fix it. Identify little ones early, get them the priority help that they need, and give them a fighting chance to learn how to read, which is the key, obviously, to a successful education. If third graders can read at grade level proficiency, 95% of them go on to graduate from high school. It's a remarkable turnaround, and it's pretty obvious. John's done nothing in the way of leading. I not only will lead, your new First Lady, my wife Claudia, is going to start a private foundation, not government money, private foundation, that'll make sure every child born, all the parents got to do is name an address, sign them up, and an age-appropriate book will land in their mailbox free every month until they go off to school. Send a powerful message and get powerful results.
I want to get back to something you said earlier. Colorado's a big state. There's a lot of people and a lot of voters, a lot of people that might be interested in helping to provide some accountability for government. How do you maintain that transparency all the way through a new term if you were to be elected? You're talking about the audits and allowing people to have their eyes on government.
Same way I did my bank business. Transparency solves a lot of problems. Let the sunlight in. This governor actually told the Denver Post that transparency creates problems. He actually said that would be better off if we have backroom deals and closed door meetings, and I believe just the opposite. When we ran our bank, certainly by law, we were subject to a lot of examinations and an enormous amount of transparency. It's people's money after all. I think that's the way that the government ought to function too. We ought to be open, and we ought to be able to defend decisions. If you sign a bill, you ought to be able to back it up and defend it. If a department isn't functioning well, let me give you an example. His Department of Energy, the state auditor found, they knew they had $252 million come in, had absolutely no idea where it went. They couldn't show you on the back of an envelope, a napkin, an Excel spreadsheet, no record of where the money went, but it went away. Oops. Another jobs training program. 91% of the files audited had mistakes, maybe even evidence of fraud and abuse in them. And at 91%, when I was running my bank, if I'd had an error rate like that, they would have had my keys and I would have been looking through bars. It's unacceptable. But in government, we just say, oh, well, and get back to you later. John's first term agenda, by his own admission, was TBD, to be determined. I'm still waiting for what his second term agenda is. Maybe it's going to be, we'll get back to you later. I don't know. What is John Hickenlooper's agenda? I was actually somewhat impressed when he was mayor of Denver. But something happened between mayor of Denver and governor, and he's lost his way as a leader.
I want to ask you about the legalization of recreational marijuana. What is your view on that?
I wasn't for it. I think we've seen numerous problems with it already. Edibles getting in the hands of our kids, tragic consequences of people overdosing on edibles. We've seen the problems with corruption maybe moving in instead of driving corruption out, just the opposite results. So what we're going to have to do, it is the law after all, and I'll take an oath to enforce the law. Regulate it as tightly as we possibly can within the law. Really educate the public as to the consequences of marijuana use. And then third, we're going to have to continue to have an objective observation and an analysis of what this has resulted in. And if the people of Colorado decide that this needs to be amended, reformed, perhaps even repealed down the way, that this was a bad experiment, then we can deal with that too. But my first job will be to regulate and educate and provide the support for law enforcement, something he said he didn't think they needed. Some of that revenue ought to be directed to law enforcement so they can do their job too.
How did you view the temporary reprieve that will happen? What would you
I would have carried out the law. Nathan Dunlap was convicted by a jury. He was sentenced to die for a heinous crime over 20 years ago. The families of those victims waited 20 years for the day when justice would finally be served and there would be closure. And John denied that justice, not because of some overwhelming new evidence that somebody needed to look at. As he said the other night in our debate, he's just had a change of heart. If he really had a change of heart, and let me stipulate that there are good moral, ethical reasons to be opposed to the death penalty. But the law in Colorado happens to say we are pro-death penalty, and Nathan Dunlap has been sentenced to die. If John really had that conversion of heart to being opposed to the death penalty, why didn't he just go ahead and grant him clemency? He had that option. What the option he took was, I can't make up my mind, I'll let the next guy do it. Now what's he do with James Holmes, the Aurora Theater shooter? We know that the tragic case of Jacob Van Winkle, those murders in Canyon City, that the DA says that impacted his decision to not go for a death penalty there. Actions have consequences. And John Hickenlooper, I think with that no decision, probably put an exclamation point for a lot of people on the fact that John has a very tough time making the difficult decisions. If John won't lead, I will. Not only on that issue, but on a whole plethora of issues that are waiting for leadership.
You just agreed the other night, I guess, during a debate, not to run negative ads against each other?
John asked me about that. And yet, when I challenged him in that same sentence, John, why don't you then denounce a negative ad that they're running against me? Not only a negative ad, an ad that's been analyzed by fact checkers as deceptive, as false, as erroneous, and John wouldn't do it. So in 1 minute, 60 seconds time, he comes up with his campaign gimmick, like shake and not do negative ads, but won't denounce it, basically being a hypocrite.
What ad are you referring to?
This is an ad that claims that somehow I committed bank fraud when our bank was sold. It's impossible. The claims that they make in that ad, if you understand anything about how a bank sale actually happens, are impossible. And the reality of the claims they make, it was 2 banks removed, and I hadn't been near the bank in years. I couldn't possibly have had any impact on what they say happened. It's completely erroneous, and John knows that.
There are a couple of ads that are running from the other side too. Maybe they're not sponsored by anyone that you know, but there are ads just like that too from both sides that are running that are accusing people of perhaps things that need to be fact checked. Would you agree to do the same thing? Fact
check is fine, and let me be very clear. There's a difference between a false negative ad and a contrast ad, one that questions judgment. So you just brought up the Nathan Dunlap decision. I think that's fair game. But you know, John's trying to have it both ways here, and he simply can't. He can't on one side be on the side of the angels and float like a dove, and at the other time, when his friends are actually making false accusations, libelous actually accusations, say that somehow that's okay and I can't have any impact. That's nonsense. They're being sponsored by the Democrat Governors Association, of which he is a member.
Tell me what else you would like to add. What else you want to focus on as you head into these finals?
You know, as I get around Colorado, you ask people, how are you doing? And I've looked out your window and I see Pikes Peak, and the fact that we're here, we're doing good. We like it here. But they don't feel like Colorado normally feels. They don't feel great about themselves. And it's that weight still holding us back. And the numbers tell that. Numerous economic reports have got us now middle of the pack instead of leading the pack as Colorado historically has. We can be great again. And Colorado is the place where Claudia and I, we've lived dreams that we never even imagined dreaming in this place. And as I look back and analyze why was that, it was because this state always allowed us to wrap our arms around opportunity, take some risk, and build up, not tear down. People feel so weighted down by government now. People tell me, I don't want to start a new business. If I had to do it over again, I wouldn't do what I did in my life. I just don't feel like I could get it done with the burden of government. That's wrong. We can start on November 4th with this election, because elections have consequences. And we can turn this around beginning next January, because I've been there. I've seen how government can actually work efficiently, and it's not doing it now. Government on the people is never the way it was drawn up. It was supposed to be about of, by, and for the people. And we can get there again, and we can get there in a hurry if we elect the right leaders. If he won't lead, I'm ready to.